Good evening, and at 7:01 we'll call to order the Lathrup Village Planning Commission meeting for April 15th, 2025. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm gonna break my neck up. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Nordmo,
Present.
Commissioner Skussel,
Present.
Commissioner Disick,
Present.
Co-Chair Fobbs, Chair Stansberry,
Present.
Commissioner Hillman,
Present.
Commissioner Hammond.
Commissioner Hammond has informed us that he had surgery. He will not be here this evening. So we need a motion to excuse Commissioner Hammond.
I move to excuse Commissioner Hammond.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Does everyone have a copy of the agenda, first and foremost?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Has everyone received and had the opportunity to review the minutes from the previous meeting?
Yes.
Need a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the public comment. Public comment section is typically for items that are not on the agenda or just in general. Public comments for 3 minutes. We ask that you give your name and street name, not your address. The commission will not comment, they just listen. So if anybody has a public comment regarding items other than what's on the agenda, mic's right there. All right, no public comment for that. On number 5, we'll move on to item number 6, which is old business and tabled items. A, capital improvement plan for 25 to 30.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Eric Peach with Giffords Webster, the city's planning consultant. At our last meeting in March, we had gone through the proposed CIP plan. The Planning Commission discussed some areas that they would like to see some changes or updates to the draft plan. And so what we have before you today in your packet is some of the minor changes. There were no real significant changes other than the fact that the Planning Commission stressed their interest in having a better understanding and a better grasp on the ratings of the different items within each of the departments within the city. So we were able to obtain that information, so it's reflected in the draft for your approval today, or your consideration for approval of today. That's something that going forward we will take into strong consideration, that when we initiate the CIP process and distribute the forms to fill out from the different departments, that will ask for rating before moving forward with a draft before the Planning Commission. What's reflected in the updated draft is that all the departments have issued their ratings, as I mentioned. All of the new items have an asterisk, so there's a little bit of inaccuracy with the previous draft. But everything that has an asterisk is considered a new item. items that are outside of the city's purview or include other entities that require partnerships. One of the other discussions that the Planning Commission had in March was to try and see if there's a way that it can be determined which items, if any, might not be fully within the purview of the city to make decisions on those CIP items. So at the end of the CIP draft document, you'll see that there's a map showing the different level of streets within the community and surrounding area. And so that's one way that we can make that determination, and it primarily centers upon the roads, sanitary storm, sewer, and water, those entities that would typically be in public rights-of-way. All the other departments would typically be strictly under the purview of the city's jurisdiction. So, and as I mentioned, the map at the end of the document is intended to provide some guidance on that. And over the next CIP, we can work on drafting something a little bit more specific if it's to the Planning Commission's desire that we look more closely into that. Otherwise, that's pretty much essentially what we went through for the Commission's consideration tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns that arise.
Sure. Last month, I inquired about the police vehicles that are described in the charts. I know that unexpectedly, the police department had to replace a vehicle within the last few months. I was curious last month, and I'm still curious if the police vehicles that remain on this list are all relevant to the list, considering that one vehicle was replaced already, or perhaps if it should fall off this list on account of that.
So there may be one that's located on the police section, PD 25-05 or 06, I believe, or 08. I believe there is one that we could get clarification on whether or not that should be taken off the CIP.
Okay.
City staff have any information regarding that?
The vehicles used by the police department are used heavily, and it is something that can result in miles being accumulated very quickly. So it may be a lower priority for one of the vehicles on the current capital improvement plan, but that is a need that the police department is always looking forward at and always planning for.
You know, I'm looking at, this is, it's PB 25-08. I do notice at the bottom of kind of the description section of that item, the words already on order. So perhaps this is the one I'm inquiring about, or this is another police vehicle that's already on order. Do you know?
That is something we can look into and provide further feedback.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
I have one more. I think it's short and quick. I know there's been a lot of discussion amongst council regarding a emergency vehicle gate to be installed at San Jose. From the last discussion I was in the room for, it sounds like that project will ultimately be very inexpensive and probably not rise to the occasion of a plan like this. Is that an accurate way of thinking about it, or ought that project need to exist on this plan?
That would be a temporary project, and
Okay.
To my understanding at this time, there is a inefficient way, or a low-cost way of achieving what we are looking for that temporary time. So I don't think it rises to the level of being on the CIP.
That would be my assumption as well. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Eric, just one clarity. This CIP for the Planning Commission is for us to basically approve that it, or recommend that it goes for approval to City Council. That's what our action is.
That is correct.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then we can have a motion to either recommend it to council or not?
I'll motion to recommend the capital improvement plan to council.
A second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, it has been recommended to council. Our item seven, new business on our agenda is the site plan for address 27700 Southfield Road. Eric or Austin, want to kick this off?
This is the city's old high school, Annie Lathrup High, and it has been vacant for the last 13, 14 years. And the property owner is here tonight to provide their proposed site plan for the adaptive reuse of our historic high school. And so due to it being a public hearing, we will have the applicant present, then we'll open up for public comment, and then at that point, the commission can deliberate.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to get the laptop set up and then hand it over to the Cernow group to present their proposal.
Is there something going to be on the screen or same
It
stuff?
will be, yep.
Same things that we have in the packet?
Same thing on, this is actually different than what is on the packet. This is their presentation.
Okay.
And it will be uploaded later.
No, I just want to check and turn around or not.
I should ask, are any of our heads in your way out there? I'm happy to move if so. Okay.
This is Jordan Sherman, Vice President of Cernow Group, and he's here for the presentation.
Oops.
I think you scroll back on the mouse. If you click on there. There. Perfect. Yeah, okay, cool.
All right, good evening, everybody. Sam Cerno with the Cerno Company. Thanks so much for coming here tonight. This project has obviously been in the making for quite some time, and we're really excited to kind of go through all the ideas and things that we've been working on over the last couple of years. So without further ado, if we want to go through the agenda tonight, I thought it'd be good just to give a quick overview about our company and our history, our involvement with our past with Lathrup, and then kind of go into really just a project overview. Jordan and I are going to take you through kind of a virtual tour of what we've gotten ready for site plan approval, and then go through some of the important evaluation criteria that we talked about at previous planning meetings, such as the need for housing, green spaces, master plan, and then lastly, we'll go through some of the updates, including our infrastructure, unit counts, traffic study, and parking. So I think, we hear a lot, the Cerno Corporation or the Cerno Group, and I think it's just kind of taking a step back. Our family has been in Lathrup Village. Our dad's first building just down the street back in 1978, just south of 11 Mile in Southfield. Mark's about, my math isn't great because I'm up here in front of a lot of you and I'm nervous tonight, but it's just shy of 50 years. And I think it's important to know that the Cerno Corporation is literally, the two of us up here and then two people sitting in the front. So we're a family company, and we're not a group that just takes on, 20 or 30 projects in a year. I mean, we really look for things that we're passionate about. We want to create vision for places where communities and people can thrive. And because we're small, we really have to give our all and put in 100% all of our time, resources, and effort into a very few set of projects. And so that's what we've been spending a lot of our time on, engaging with Giffords-Webster, with the city, the DDA, and the public, really trying to come up with a solution for this. If you go back, I think that, it kind of is summarized by our mission, which is creating spaces for people to thrive, and just looking at our core values: family, teamwork, dependability, best in class, and never fearing a challenge. I mean, this building has been a challenge. I mean, looking back over the 14 years that it's been vacant, I mean, everybody from, the woodwork, since this thing is on Southfield Road, you can't miss it, has approached us to try and figure out what to do with this school. Whether it was a brewery or a nonprofit or a school or a different apartment complex, an office building, I mean, you name it, we've been approached. And when people walk up to this building and they go inside and they see what a project it is, it has, deterred a lot of folks. And I think that never fear a challenge core value is important, because we've never been more determined than now to try and figure out a solution, because over the last 15 years, our company has really worked on a lot of adaptive reuse projects. And although we're not technically residents of Lathrup, I've been working in Lathrup Village, since I was basically 11 years old, on the different buildings, and I felt like I've been a part of this community my entire life. And so I feel like while a lot of people have been, afraid to kind of roll up their sleeves and dig into this school, for me, it's more than just a real estate project. I mean, this community has been part of my entire life. With my brother Max, who's here, we are determined to figure something out, because I believe in Lathrup and I believe in this community, and I think that we can come up with something great. So just kind of moving on past our company, some of our tenants that are in town across the street on the commercial side, which we're really proud of. Obviously, we know what happened with the Panera and some of the commercial stuff that we've been trying to put investment in and revitalize that side of the street. And now, we're really committed to trying to figure out something with the school project. As I touched on earlier, so talking about our track record in adaptive reuse, our company headquarters is actually in the 1939 Birmingham Post Office. And I love this picture, because really the only thing different outside of the building between now and 1940 are the cars out front. And when we got into this, we're here tonight with Kevin Biddison, who's not only the architect for this school project, but for the post office and some of our other adaptive reuse buildings, is the inside, and a lot of complicated, conditions existed. So on the left is what we were kind of dealing with when we took over the building. It was an abandoned post office. It had stopped being a post office for years, and we basically underwent a 2.5-year renovation to transform it into a beautiful Class A office building. And just some other examples, our most recent project was a church, Christian Science church, that was built in 1926, and we recently completed that in 2023 into a global software company's headquarters. And then down on the bottom was an old school administration building. And all of these buildings have a lot in common. They're very unique conditions. They don't build them the way that they used to, and it's really complicated, and you really never know what you're getting into until you're really in the weeds in the middle of the construction. And so all of these projects have really gotten us confident to the point where we can take on the big behemoth Annie Lathrup School, because this by far is going to be the most complicated project, I think, out of all of them. And I just thought it would be important for you guys to know that this isn't like we're walking in blind. I mean, like I said, we've got almost 2 decades of experience in working with Birmingham and the local communities, and dealing with all different sorts of construction challenges, and we're really proud of how they look today. So just to kind of keep things rolling. Mike, you want me to keep going? Go ahead.
Okay, so in terms of the Planning Commission evaluation criteria, we're going to run through 4 parts of this. The first is the project involves the rehabilitation of a historic structure. That technically is not necessary after the following Planning Commission decided that you don't have to have a historic structure to do first floor residential, which we support, but it's a key part of the program, so we're going to explain that. Then we're going to go through the passive and active open spaces, parks, plazas, events, and like how we're going to be able to use the school as a space for tenants, but also make it open to the public. Then I'm going to do a lot of slides about the need for housing in Lathrup Village, so we'll be a little bit of education on that. And then we'll talk about the master plan and how this project is consistent with what's outlined there. So we'll start with the project itself.
So we're obviously all familiar with this picture sitting right outside the window, but this is one of the historic images, and I think that, you know, when I look at this building, it's a beautiful building, and we're obviously very determined to try and honor the original structure, keep the original portion, but transform it into a use where you know, our tenants of the development and the residents can enjoy. So this is the current state of the building. I think that, as we kind of touched on, it's been vacant and really unusable since 2012. Every time there's a weather event, every time you know, a year goes by without this being used, the systems are completely obsolete. We've had lots of weather issues. We've had to have, you know, restoration companies come out, especially last year when there was a storm. The benefit was we had to clear the trees, but it's just, the problem is that it's a very expensive art project that's starting to become more and more unfeasible to maintain. And again, just, you know, even getting into the weeds of it, you know, it's even hard to cover from an insurance standpoint because of the constant decay of the building. And, you know, I hate saying that because we take such pride in all of our assets, but it's really hard when you have, you know, an old building that's, you know, falling apart, hard to find a use. And every year, it's constantly, you know, it's costing money, and it's really a lose for us, and I know that it's currently a lose situation for the community. So we feel like time is really running out to try and figure out what we can do to save the school. So I think, you know, the back of this is looking at the back of the school. If you're at Annie Lathrup Park looking in, and you can kind of see, you know, the additions that were done in the 50s and the 70s that were added on, and you can't even really tell, but, you know, technically if you look, the green roof portion is really the original 1926 structure, and that's really what we're aiming to try and preserve. So there's going to be some work taking all of that and seeing what's back there and turning it back into a beautiful original building. So that's the same view, and I thought it would be great so we can kind of go back and forth to show what it looks like now versus what it will look like when we're done. And I think it's really important because, you know, we're directly connecting to Annie Lathrup Park, and once we take off the stuff that was kind of scabbed on, we're going to be able to really expose that original structure, and that's going to be the new entrance for our tenants to get into the building. So you can see the landscaping and the connection in, and basically redoing all of the windows back there. I think it'll be really special to be able to activate that part of the school that's really just been dormant for, you know, much longer than the 13 years. So again, just another view, you can kind of see the additions that were added on, you know, later on in the years, and going to a view where it would look like, you know, when we're done renovating it. I think you can kind of see that now the school is opened up, and what we're excited about is that this is, like we call it, the new tenant entrance. So, you know, this is going to be where people are going to be entering in the building once we're done renovating the school. So again, just another image so you guys can see. And not only were we going to be, you know, renovating, we're going to be preserving the outside, and then there's going to be certain elements on the inside that we can preserve where we can. And so, you know, now we've kind of just given you an example of what the outside of the building will look like compared to what it looks like today. And then we're going to be hopefully running through like a virtual tour of what you're going to expect to see inside now versus later.
Yep, so if you think about this as like a tour of the building, this is where we are currently. Now we're walking in the new tenant entrance. Now we walk into the building itself. And we want to just highlight what this building is and what this building isn't. So for starters, the building is a clubhouse or a tenant amenity center. So for the tenants who live inside the apartment unit, this is going to be open workspaces, workout facilities, break rooms, cafe. It's going to be an attractive place for them to live, hang out, and be part of a community. Now, there's not going to be any apartments inside the school. It's going to be these workspaces. There's also going to be commercial elements. So commercial elements are going to be things that are going to be accessible for Lathrup Village residents. That's co-working, accessibility, and event spaces. So I'll show some images, but it's important to understand the distinction between the two. And because we're going to have tenants here, we want people to know there's going to be 24/7 property management on it. So we'll have a full-time property management team on the site like we do for all of our properties, but we'll have a manager living on site, and we'll also have a dedicated security team to monitor the property. We also met with the chief of police, Lieutenant Zhang, earlier last week, and we talked about all the different things that go into surveillance cameras and giving the police access to the building, chances to do license plate readers, and just maintaining security for us and for the community is essential. We're dedicated to it. We're open to communicating with law enforcement the whole way through. We're going to be providing our own security team, but also this, understanding of what the building is and for who it is and how it serves its purpose. So now if we enter the building, this is the current state of what a hallway looks like inside the building, and this is what we want to open it up into. So you see, this is the tenant entry side. This is where you'd walk in. There's a event space, basketball, pickleball, flex type space, a hallway for open break rooms, communication, cafes. This is the upstairs hallway, so the second level, overlooking the clubhouse space. When there's different events, you'll be able to sit and hang out and look down. We envision this as co-working. You can walk down this hallway around into the tenant amenity space, really make it a beautiful, attractive place for people who want to live as like something that doesn't exist anywhere else. This is the on-site cafe, grab and go, coffee, things of that nature. And then this is the historic gym. This is what it looked like before, or what it's going to be, and this is what we're hoping to turn it into. So restoring it, keeping the windows, which are part of the historic restoration. This is an idea of like what a clubhouse could look like for a music event. We'll get into like how you would actually rent it out later on, but this idea of this space being a real flexible part of the school, where you can have different things participating. So you'll see different types of events, business communities, hangouts, things like that. This is the gym, so turning an old classroom inside the school into a gym and workout for the tenants of the building. And then this is like current state of what one of the classrooms looks like. And we want to turn that into commercial co-working. So we're seeing this in a lot of different communities these days where they have spaces that so this would be for both tenants of the building and residents on a subscription model, could come in and rent out spaces to run a business, to have an office, to have a space that's part of the community. So basically turning these old classrooms that aren't being used into a hub for business, young entrepreneurs, and people who don't have a space to go or don't want to rent out somewhere expensive in another community. And we found this image. We've been working with the Wabic group to find this fireplace. If anybody has an updated image of what this looks like with color, we're interested. This is the closest we could find. This is what it looks like now, all boarded up. And this is our commitment to restore it. So we think we want to keep all this millwork. This is a space that we think the Historic District could have different events. Residents could rent it out. We could do small commission meetings in it. We know that this area is really important to the history of Lathrup Village, and we're committed to restoring it and bringing it back to life with all of its honor and glory and paying a tribute to the past and the history of the building. Yep.
And I just, kind of going back, and I just wanting to reiterate, the gymnasium, the hallways where we have the working space, the gym, all of these are amenities for the tenants of the building. And I think, in the past, there's been questions about, well, is this an amenity for everybody to use? And the answer is, it's for everybody that is a tenant, of the actual development. So, like I said, this clubhouse that we're creating out of the gymnasium is going to be a tenant-specific amenity. Same thing with the hallways and the actual fitness centers. However, some of the classrooms, at least 1,000 square feet, including the old kindergarten, is going to be commercial co-working. So that's going to be an area where anybody could come in, kind of like if you think of like a WeWork, can come in and rent those spaces, whether you're a tenant or a resident of Lathrup Village or somebody else, like Jordan said, that is looking for some co-working space. And I just think that that's important to know because this is a private building, but we are going to incorporate a commercial mixed-use element to it.
So now we're on the Southfield Road side. So if you think about it, we started the tenant entry, then we went inside the building. Now this is on the Southfield Road side of the building. And this is really important. So this is the historic notch. We met with the Historic District about a month ago, February, 2 months ago, and they gave us great feedback about what we could do in the building to showcase the chimneys and the brick and feature the school on the Southfield Road side. We submitted a plan to Historic, which got approved, which just had this one notch in here that exposed the chimneys and exposed the brick. Since then, oh, sorry, I'm in the way. I'll go on the other side for a sec. Since then, we've actually increased this notch on both sides by 300%. And we're really proud of this because it showcases the school in a unique way. The brick is going to play well with the school itself. It shows the chimneys, and it also shows our dedication to working with the community. This was something with the historic district. They recommended it. We went back. We got it done. We worked together on it, and we've just continued to go back at it and make it better. And I think it's just a really good reflection of like the work that Sam and the team want to put into working with this community, taking in feedback, listening, addressing it, and then continuing to push even beyond once we get it approved. And we've gotten feedback from some folks on this and on the board, and we're just really proud of like how it's turning out because it's going to make it better, and we think this little historic notch is also going to be a signature of the building going forward. Okay, next. The project includes passive and active open spaces. So this is like what's part of the criteria for Planning Commission review. So this is the property line overview, just to kind of clarify where the property line is. It's actually next door if anybody wants to take a walk over later and take a look. And it kind of gives you an idea for where the property line at the top ends, and that's where Annie Lathrup Park starts. And then like east of this, on top, is where the residents will start. So there's going to be this built-in green space that's already part of the project because it's off property. And this kind of gives you an idea. Like up here, it just kind of shows what it is directly on it, but there's also all this other green space to the south of the project as well. So we're going to have active and open green spaces on our property, and I'll show an image of that too. It's about 40,000 square feet, which is 22% of the entire site. But in addition to all of the green spaces on our site, there's already this built-in green space buffer zone as part of it. And we wanted to show you guys a couple images. So this is if you're on the back of Annie Lathrup Park. So right now where you're standing, you're not on our property, you're on city property. This is what it looks like. It's tranquil, but it's a little run down. There's goalie nets without any netting on it. And we want to turn it into something like really beautiful and participate with the city to make this green buffer zone a place that, with nicer landscaping and really something that's like, not only will it be away from the neighborhoods and kind of create this like natural buffer, but we're hoping it can kind of be this like in-between space where both tenants of the building and residents can use this park and it can thrive for years to come. So here's another example. This is what it looks like today. Again, we're standing on the back of Annie Lathrup Park. This is what we're hoping to be like in the future. So we'll add in this greenery, not only just to kind of space it out between the residents and the site, but also just to beautify the area in general. And then this is a dog park, which is off our property. This is actually city property, but we want to kind of show an angle of what this can look like revitalized with both tenants and residents being able to participate in this improvement project. And then integrated event space. Our vision here is like we want to work with the community with like farmers markets and different events that can happen, leveraging this green space and leveraging this area for the tenant entrance and with Annie Lathrup Park to turn it into a place where whenever there's summer events, like there's a garden festival coming up, Lathrup Village Music Festival, farmers markets, like we want this to be a go-to area for the community to congregate.
One other thing, just to bring it up, and it might be later, but another thing as far as collaborating with the community, it was brought to our attention that there are a number of memorial trees. It's actually not technically on our property, but if you go, there might be a previous slide, but basically if we look at the property line, kind of like right around here where there's a fork, there's currently a pathway that goes along here. There's about 3 to 6 memorial trees. And originally in the plan that we submitted, our civil engineers at the time had those removed. So our goal is obviously to preserve those, preserve the plaques, really make sure that those trees are taken care of and well kept for and not, destroyed. Obviously, there's, a lot of significance and importance to some of the community members. And so again, we appreciate the community bringing that to our attention, but it's, the Cerno company's, mission to protect those. And I think that that's just important so that it's here. And we're also going to be, reflecting that on the updated plan at some point. Jordan mentioned the buffer zone. I think it's also important to kind of talk about the fact that we also have green space on the site. Originally, I would say not originally, but one of the previous iterations, we had a lot more concrete and units on this, and it kind of just fell to the point where it was too crowded and unlivable. We've now added open spaces on the property. So in addition to beautifying the green buffer zone, the buffer between our project, Annie Lathrup Park, which separates us and the charming neighborhoods. I think it's important to, also show that we have lots of open spaces for parks and plazas, on the property. So we've got some outdoor gathering spaces with some barbecue areas and things like that. Again, this is all going to be, managed by, our property management company and the Cerno group, and this will be a place for, the tenants of the building specifically. But I think that, like Jordan was saying, I mean, we've done so many things and involved in a lot of different events with the community over the years, and so we think it'd be really special to basically integrate the outdoor areas of Annie Lathrup Park and the open spaces for parks and plazas to hold, special events with the community, such as like the farmers market or, music in the park, et cetera. And then on the Southfield Road side, we're looking at really reactivating the green space in front. Obviously, this abuts Southfield Road, but there's about a 12,000 square foot pocket since the school is in the center of the property, and our goal is to really activate this space. And this is going to be an area where really anybody in the community can, walk by. I think it does a great job at showcasing the old historic facade, which we're all really proud of. And I think this will be a nice area for people to walk and gather and spend some time. Essentially, it's right in smack middle of Village Center, and so just some some renderings with open spaces and things like that. So this is now kind of getting into the event spaces. So we said by reservation only because, again, to address, any, just to clarify, like the clubhouse itself, which is currently gymnasium, is going to be renovated into this amenity for the tenants of the building. However, that being said, we feel very passionate about, I'm not sure who's been in the gym, over the last 10 years, but it's a really wide open. The ceilings are these vaulted, beautiful ceilings. We originally had plans to put units in there. It ended up not proving viable, and we finally had the light bulb click of, hey, let's make this a great amenity and showcase the gymnasium for the tenants of the building. And we kind of went a little bit further as to say, well, we have this commercial co-working that we're going to be incorporating. We're going to try and incorporate the Annie Lathrup Park as an amenity. Like, there's got to be a play here where we can actually take the gymnasium on a reservation basis only and rent it out as either commercial event space or, again, collaborate, with the city, by appointment only to have, whether it's a historic society event or, we've had nonprofits like Boys to Men come to us, and to be able to, if you go to the next one, I think we've got a great one of like the stage and just having like a speaker, and you've got the balconies, and I just think that, again, it's by reservation only, but what's great about the building kind of being in the center and the fact that we're preserving this original structure is that it's made out of block. The materials are so solid that it's really not going to interrupt the living situation of the residents that are kind of flanking either side. And so we feel really passionate about being able to utilize this on the weekends or even during the week at certain times, like I said, by reservation to incorporate an event space, whether it's commercial or in collaboration with the city. All right, it's housing.
Are there any questions? We're happy to be interrupted if there's any questions in the building. I'm about to go into some data about housing shortage information in Lathrup Village from the planning commissioners. No, okay. Okay, so now we're going into housing. So part of the commission's criteria is we need to demonstrate a need for housing in Lathrup Village. So let's go into multifamily. So multifamily is apartments, multiple people living in units across one building. So we worked with Voight Strategic Initiatives. They're one of the leading market study firms in the world. They do this in all 50 states. They're the top of the top. And they evaluated, we wanted to get as close as possible. So we don't want to do the US or the state of Michigan. We said, make this as tight. So it's Lathrup Village, and the 5-mile radius around it is as small as they can go to get as micro as possible on showing the housing shortage in this town. And we are going to show you a bunch of stats based on this market area. So first, let's define what a shortage is, okay? So the official terms for a housing shortage is obviously, everyone knows supply and demand, that's the equilibrium, but there's a shortage when there's too much demand and not enough supply. So the official rates for that is if there's over 10% vacancy, which means 10% of your housing units are not being used, that means you have a surplus. If there's 5 to 10% vacancy, that means you have stable housing. And if you have under 5% vacant, that means you have a shortage. So if there's under 5% of homes or apartments available, shortage. Econ 101. So we looked at Lathrup Village overall. So there's a total net in this market area, there's 4,426 units. Of those units, only 132 are available. So that's a 3% vacancy rate across all of the market index. Clearly in the under 5% vacancy rate shortage. But there's more to this than just the vacancy rate. First, there's the age. 92% of all apartment units in Lathrup Village were developed prior to 1989. So 92% of the housing stock in Lathrup Village is older than me. In addition, there's only since 2018, there's only one new unit that's been developed. That's the Ivy Lofts over here in Berkeley. And that unit is at 0% vacancy. So you have an aging stock, you have a lack of new development, you have a clear demand for that development, it's fully booked out, and overall you're seeing a shortage rate across the board. So when you look at these units, we see this as a problem, but also as an opportunity and clear indication that there's a shortage, there's demand, and that a unit like this can help solve both of those issues. Now let's look at all 18 buildings. So this is a look at all 18 buildings in the index. You can see there's a 97% occupancy rate. That's the same thing as a 3% vacancy rate, 97.3, it adds up to 100. 17 of the 18 buildings in our area are in a shortage territory. So if you look at all these different numbers, again, so this would be 95%. So you have 95, 98, 100, 98, 96, 97, 100, 100, 100, 98, 96. 17 of the 18 are considered housing shortage. If you look at the Crossroads at Southfield, that was built in 1965 and is in shortage territory. The Sapphire was built in 1968. It's also in shortage territory. So these buildings that are very old, they're still fully booked out. The only one in this, the Loop at Greenfield, out of these 18 buildings, the only one that's not considered in shortage territory is 92.3% occupied. So that's considered stable. It's not even in a surplus territory. So when you look at all the buildings, it's pretty clear that, even despite its age, despite its lack of new development, there's a clear shortage in all these different buildings.
Can I add another point too? I think the other thing to notice, and you might point to it later, but like if you look at the quality rating, the QR column, you see almost no. Yeah, there you go. You see almost no A's. All right, you had it. I noticed it, and I think it's important. It's a lot of the stock is old and it's sold out. So.
Question.
Sure.
On that previous list, what's the name of the project south of, just immediately south of Lathrup Village in Southfield that has all the white buildings, one of which is burned? Where is that on the list?
I'm not sure.
It's one north, it's south of 10 miles.
South of 10 miles.
South of Lincoln.
Okay. I think those are those actually those might be condos
They are.
and not apartments.
They're owned.
Yep,
Yeah.
those are owned. So we're talking about the rental units.
They were apartments, then they got converted to condos.
Yeah, so these are for apartment buildings in the market index. So if you can own something like that, a condo would show up in this list.
But we will get to houses also.
Yeah, we're going to get to single-family homes in a second. But this is another key point. So not only is there a vacancy, but if you look at the ratings, and this is all from the market study, of those 19 buildings, only one is an A-rated project, and it's a 1.2% vacancy rate. So our plan is we're going to develop this school to an A-rated project. It'll be the first one in Lathrup Village. The unit count. So since we met with Historic District, we have not changed the size of the building. The footprint of the building has remained the same as is on the site plan. But because of the historic notch and a couple of these changes, the total amount of units has changed. So there's 83 one-bedrooms, 62 two-bedrooms for a total of 145 apartment units. We went through, and this is the same chart as this chart. I just reordered it in terms of size of total units. So if you were to rank this project in terms of how many units of everything in the market, we'd rank 11th out of 19, so below average. So I think there's maybe a misconception about the size of this project and how many people would fit If you look at the market index itself, this is a below average size project compared to what's in the market. 11th out of 19. Okay, single family housing. This is Zillow, pulled 2 days ago, of all the houses that are available for sale in Lathrup Village. This is Zillow for pulled all the houses that are available for sale in Berkeley. What you can see here is that there's only 3 houses available in all Lathrup Village. There was 23 houses sold within the past 365 days. So that's a 1 month supply of housing, 3 divided by 23. It's a 1 month supply, but a 6 month supply is what's needed to be considered a stable housing market. If you look at Berkeley, even though they have 30 homes in a considerable amount, they're only at a 4 month rolling average. So they're also in a shortage despite how many houses they have available. We pulled, this is all publicly available information, we pulled every single house that was sold in Lathrup Village in the past 365 days. There was 23 homes sold in Lathrup Village over this time. And what we wanted to see was we wanted to show demand. How do you show demand? Well, how fast do these things sell? How much money do they sell for? So, first we looked at days on the market. A house in Lathrup Village over the past 365 days was on the market for an average of 33.8 days. The state of Michigan average is 62 days on the market. So what we're seeing is homes in Lathrup Village are selling 50% faster, or 2 times as fast, as every single other house in the state. Then we looked at the price, because you'd be like, okay, well, it's one thing for this thing to sell fast, but how much money is it selling for? That's what everyone's really after. Well, the idea is that you want to sell your house for as close to list price as possible, right? You put your house up for $300,000, you want to sell for $300,000. Homes in Lathrup Village are selling for 97.9% of their list price on average. The state of Michigan average is 95.4%. So what you're finding is you're selling faster and you're selling closer to list price more often. And then you look at, okay, well, what about exceeding list price? So that's, you put it up for $300 and it sells for more than you even thought you were going to get. Homes in Lathrup Village, 8 of these 23 actually exceeded their list price. The state of Michigan averages 27% for exceeding list price. Lathrup Village averages 39%. So what we're seeing overall, this is for homes. You're on the market for less time, you're selling faster, you're selling closer to list price than average, and you're exceeding list price more than average. And we think that showcases a clear demand for housing in Lathrup Village. So overall, housing shortage summary, supply is low. There's a 97% occupancy for apartments and only a 1 month supply of homes. Demand is high. Every new development is sold out, and the homes are selling faster than state averages. And the stock is aged. 92% was built prior to '89, and only 1 new development since 2017. The master plan, this is directly from Lathrup Village's master plan. It actually speaks to population decline in the city. So in 1970, this is when Lathrup Village has had its peak population. Since then, there's a continued projected downward population trend in the city through 2045. We're down 15% from peak. And this is, again, from the master plan, acknowledges that this is not typical for cities in this area. Southfield, between now and 2045, is projected to increase by 14% of its overall population. Lathrup Village is projected to decrease by 8%. So that's a 22% delta in population between Lathrup Village and Southfield. And lack of housing shortage is a key factor in all this. If you look at like specifics, this is from Voight, between now and 2028, we're losing families, 5.4% of loss in the 24 and under bracket. We're stable in the 25 to 54 bracket, and there's a 26% gain in the 75 plus bracket. And another thing that's part of this development is that there's a growing concern that this growing bracket, there's nowhere to go. They're not selling their houses because there's nowhere else to go. So what we're hoping for in this development is going to be a possibility for those in that bracket to potentially move in, downsize if they want to, and then this thing can help really solve for that population trend that we're seeing across the board. Now we'll get into the city's master plan, but that was a pretty in-depth dive into housing and population trends.
Thanks, Jordan. So, talking about the master plan, this is an image from the recent Giffords 2021 master plan and our renderings. And I think it's important to note that, there's a lot of back and forth about whether or not, the master plan is something that the community supports. And I think that, some of the challenge from being a developer is that, the master plan was created that drove a lot of the ordinances that we have to follow. And I think that, over the last, number of years, we've worked, really hard with Giffords and, the city of Lathrup to try and come up with something that fit in as much as we could with the master plan. But there's also things that, we had to, work around in order to incorporate, the school. And so I think that, just kind of keeping that in mind, rehabilitation and growth. So all of these things that we've talked about, the existing structure will be rehabilitated, while new buildings are also expected should be placed in a way that complements the school. I mean, we went through that and multiple rounds with HDC, and I think that we're compliant there. The parking don't detract from the pedestrian-focused site layout. So there's again been back and forth on whether or not the parking should be in the front of the building or in the back. Now, according to the master plan and according to the zoning ordinance, the new buildings need to be placed up at the street. And frankly, it made sense for the Annie Lathrup apartment development because we wanted to not only meet the parking criteria, but not also have the buildings pushed to the east that would then encroach into the Annie Lathrup Park and then basically lose that buffer zone that we went over earlier. And I think that the parking and the placement of the buildings is also very important because, again, there's a 2 acre plus the municipal park green zone buffer that we talked about earlier. And it's not our intention to, disrupt the charm and the kind of the B&B vibe of these, beautiful neighborhoods that have been around for a while. And I think that the buffer zone and, the fact that the buildings are placed up closer to the street really insulate the school being up on Southfield Road. And I think that it lends well to preserving these neighborhoods that so many of the residents cherished. So we're allowed to go up to a maximum of 5 stories. As we've shown in the plans, we're only going to 4. We talked about gathering spaces, and then we've also reviewed materials that we can also answer more questions about if it comes up. So the Ivy Lofts, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it, but this is the development that was finished in 2023. That was the 78 units. That was 78 out of the 4,400 apartments that are within this market area that Jordan covered. And I think it's important to understand that all of these businesses came about with that residential development. And I think that, right now, the struggle since, as I've said, we've been in this community since, the 70s, is that really the only thing that's been supporting these businesses, I shouldn't say the only, but the major driver that's been supporting these commercial businesses has been Southfield Road. And I think that, the creation of Ivy Lofts sparking all of these businesses is really, I think, going to happen in a large way with the school and the apartments. I mean, bringing in people into this community is going to, we've heard, hey, we'd really like to have a nice restaurant. I mean, bringing in the residents and bringing in those types of folks are going to drive those types of new businesses. And so, you look at this is the Bombshell Treat Bar. There was another one in the previous one, like Aqua Tots. And I think this is the one in the middle of the swim school. And I think that's important because now you have a place where it's really going to be attractive for little kids and young families to, have a swim place. And I think that more businesses like that are going to open up on the commercial zoning areas in Lathrup instead of just having, what we currently have, which is just quick serve or, which are great businesses. But again, a lot of that is just driven by the traffic. And I think that these are going to be more family oriented. And it's not just the businesses. I mean, you look at the next, it's the people. I've gone to Bombshell. I mean, these are, people that are, starting off very entrepreneurial, that are investing, all of their lives into their businesses and into the community. And I feel like being able to put this development in Lathrup is going to start to put more of these businesses on the map. And I think that is really, in a lot of ways, speaks towards the goals of the master plan.
So this goes into the cost of housing, which is a problem. This is straight from the Lathrup Village Master Plan. Finding attainable housing can be a challenge in Lathrup Village because it can stress family finances. Many people find themselves spending more on housing and leaves less money around. So from the master plan, it's noting that Lathrup Village residents are paying 33% of their money towards housing, and the U.S. Department of housing only suggests 30%. So right now we're finding people in Lathrup Village are spending more on housing that's being recommended across the country. And as you see this, I think there's maybe some misunderstanding in terms of like the development for who this serves. Our units are gonna cost for like a one bedroom, $1,800 plus, and for a two bedroom, $2,100 plus. So in order to afford living like that, it's really for this area between 65 and 125 that serves about 25% of the market here in Lathrup Village. So it's not gonna be low income housing or Section 8 or something like that. It's not even gonna be affordable. What it's considered is attainable for young professionals to be able to afford that type of rent. If you kind of look here versus 42 West, which is a building down the street, and types of rents that they're going for, we're going for those same types of rents and those types of incomes. We asked the housing study to tell us, like, who do you think is going to be living in this space? Who can afford to live in it? And the titles they gave us, social worker, police officer, firefighter, nurse practitioner, teacher, electrician, these are the types of peoples and the types of incomes that we're anticipating wanting to be part of this. Young professionals who want to move into an area and want to be in a nice new space that can afford to pay between $1,800 and $2,200 a month. I mean, Beaumont is right around the corner, and there's all these young nurses and doctors that are living in different places outside of Lathrup Village. Everything that we see in terms of the market study for who this is going to be attainable for is people who we think can add a lot of value to the community, long-term and short-term. And then this is interesting too from Southfield. This is from Redfin. People are moving, this is from December 24 to February 25. People are moving to Southfield, not just from other areas in Michigan. These are all the other cities where people are moving to Southfield from. So if I'm planning a city or long-term want to set the city up for success, I'd want to make my city interesting and attainable for people who want to move in and come in and add tax revenue to the product. So Southfield's doing it. This is like legitimate numbers for where people are coming from, and we want Lathrup Village to be able to capture that as well. This is from the unit study. So if someone's like, oh, well, are you guys going to be able to make this work? Who's actually going to live in it? Our market analytics say that with 145 units, we need a capture rate of 5.5%. So that means if everybody who can afford this development and everyone who lives in this community, we need about 5.5% of them to be captured. That's considered a low and achievable capture rate. So this is some of the data that we look at from our perspective. We're kind of letting you guys under the hood a little bit for why we think there's a market for this, who we think the market's going to be, and why we think it's attainable to get these spots leased up. Okay. So those are all the criteria. We still have more, but wait, there's more. Additional updates to be made. We have infrastructure, so we brought in a couple experts from infrastructure, from traffic study, security, and parking. So I have infrastructure. Do you want to come up and just maybe talk for a sec?
Alan Eisenberg, Nowak and Frost Engineers. So we had plenty of conversations with Giffords Webster as we were going through this project. Basically, what it boiled down to was, is there going to be enough water, sanitary, and storm capacity to make this development work? With the water pressure, there is capacity for that. There is a 12-inch water main along Southfield Road that has the option to tap into that. The storm system, as noted on the screen there, we're required to put in underground detention. So the site right now does not have any stormwater collection system other than the catch basins and outlets at a full rate. We're going to be required to hold back that rate to a 0.8 CFS with the system right now has the capacity to take 10 CFS. So we're going to drastically reduce the amount of water going into that storm system. For sanitary sewer, same thing. There is a 12-inch sanitary sewer that leaves the school site right now and actually heads toward this property. We're going to be reducing that based on the units versus the school use. And then as far as the sanitary goes, there was also updates to the retention tank by the city of Lathrup Village for their retention basin to help make that a little more operational and allow for developments like this to go in. Questions on that from Planning Commission?
Which retention tank are you talking about?
Planning Commission.
Is that the one that's
Yeah, right now we only can take questions from the planning commission now, but we'll be able to answer that. He's going to stick around. He told me he's got a hockey game at 9:30, but he's going to stick. Okay. So we can, if you have more questions to follow up, we can talk to him. Okay, security and enforcement. We know this is really important. We met with the chief of police and Lieutenant Zhang, and we're all on board. So the proposed development, first of all, it's adjacent to the police station. So I called out in the market study that that's going to be viewed as something as a positive because it's safe. But we are open. We're going to work with the police. We're going to give them access to the surveillance cameras. We're going to do license plate readers. They're going to have fobs to the building. If there's ever an emergency, they're going to be able to get in and support. Parking enforcement, we're going to have on-site staff to enforce parking in the tenant lot. We talked about dedicated security, and this came up too with trash. We're going to, we maintain all of our properties, but we're going to have trash cans out there to ensure the green spaces stay green and are well maintained and nice for everybody. Okay, traffic. We brought in Nick Kennedy, who is from Southfield Engineering, who did a full traffic study, because I know it's on a lot of people's mind, and he's going to walk us through some traffic statistics.
Sure. Again, my name is Nick Kennedy. I work with Stonefield Engineering. And what our office did is we conducted a traffic study for the proposed development. What we wanted to do is get an understanding of the traffic that would be generated by the site, how it would affect the surrounding roadway network, and obviously the residential community just to our east. What you see on this first slide is a comparison of the traffic that would be generated by the proposed development and the traffic from the previous school that was on the site. Obviously, again, the school has been closed for 10 to 15 years, but when looking at this from a traffic perspective, it's important to understand how a site handled traffic in the past with a use that was previously on the site and how it would handle it in the future. So again, what you can see from this slide and this table is that the 145 unit residential development generates significantly less traffic than the school used to. And if you could just, one more. What we also wanted to do is get an understanding of other uses in this area. Obviously, Southfield Road has a number of retail and commercial and office uses along it. So we wanted to get an understanding of if a residential building wasn't occupying this site, what if an office was, or what if a strip retail plaza was. So again, this table shows that the 145 unit residential development generates significantly less traffic, both throughout the day and then your typical commuter peak hours, than some of the other uses that would be permitted in this district. This is a large parcel. You could obviously fit, a larger shopping plaza or medical office or general office. Again, obviously there's a school on the site today. So we wanted to get a comparison of if this wasn't a residential development, what would be on this site and what would the traffic that would be generated by those uses would be. Just go one more. Again, keeping in mind the residential community just to our east. I know this was a concern. It's been brought up to us multiple times. So what we wanted to do is mitigate as many cars going through that community as possible. What we're proposing here is at our driveway, which is sort of right in this area right here, is to restrict right turns. What this is going to do is it's going to mitigate or remove any cut-through traffic that would be using Golden Gate Drive. Excuse me. That would be using Golden Gate Drive to head north or wrapping around to go south. What we want to do is keep all the traffic volume from this site on Southfield Road. As you know, this is a major commuter corridor in the area. It gives you access to multiple interstates and state highways in the area. So we want to filter our traffic through Southfield Road and not through that residential community. What we're going to do is, obviously propose no right turn signage. We're going to use geometry to sort of angle that driveway so people coming out of the driveway actually have to make a left turn and go onto Southfield Road rather than start cutting through the residential community. Again, this sort of goes with the last slide, but we're trying to mitigate as much as possible any cars, using Lathrup Boulevard, California Drive, Red Leaf Lane, all of those streets in that area. We want to mitigate how many cars are actually using it and going to this site. Generally in the traffic industry, that's what you want to do. You want to keep cars on the major highways or throughways rather than put them onto residential streets. Another thing we wanted to look at, obviously we have all these numbers. We could compare the traffic volumes to the school that was on the site. We could compare it to hypothetical buildings and offices and retail buildings that could be on the site. But really, it comes down to what is the traffic that would be generated by the development itself. There's a number of publications, industry data that shows, that gives thresholds on how many cars going to and from a site would start to have an effect on the roadway network. What the ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, sets that threshold is at 50 vehicles at any one approach at any intersection. Excuse me. What we found is that when we did our traffic study, having 2 access points is a major benefit for this. Cars will either go through Golden Gate Drive or through Sunset. It kind of disperses traffic in 2 different directions. What we found is that no one approach at any one intersection would experience more than 50 trips. I know some things about queuing and delay and those kinds of more in-depth traffic things were brought up. But again, when we found and looked at thresholds that are published by some of these industry standards and publications, we don't see that there would be a significant effect on queuing or delays on Southfield Road or really in this area in general. I did want to bring up 2 things that I did look up right before this. I looked at the Southfield Road traffic volumes and then compare that to the volumes that would be generated by this site. The site would increase the traffic by about 1%, typically seen as pretty negligible as far as delays and queuing goes. We do know that the Panera Bread across the street sort of just opened. My office actually worked on that traffic study as well. When I've been out to the site, I don't believe from a traffic perspective that this development in conjunction with the Panera Bread would really have any effect on the traffic signal. You're looking at about 1 to 2 cars every minute or 2 exiting or entering the site. Again, typically not seen as having a significant impact on the roadway network.
These numbers are per hour, are they not?
Yeah, if you want to just scroll back to maybe the first table. Yeah, this one's good actually. So we actually have 2 things here. We have the daily total, so that's traffic in and out of the site all day, and then the weekday morning and weekday evening peak hours. Typically, as traffic engineers, we look at the worst hour of the day. So typically in the morning, that's somewhere between 7 and 9. In the evening, probably somewhere between 4 and 6. Again, typically when commuters are going to work, coming home from work. So when you look at the peak hour traffic, residential developments have a little bit of a different traffic pattern than some of these other developments. Residential, people leave their house to go to work in probably a 1 to 2 hour window between 7 and 9, come home from work somewhere between 4 and 6. Whereas when you're looking at a school development, people are coming to the school within a 15, 20-minute window, leaving the site, dropping kids off, things like that. So it's not only is it less traffic volume as a whole, but less intense within a short time frame. You're kind of looking at traffic spread out throughout the whole day rather than in a quick 20, 30-minute stint. Does that answer your question? The last thing I want to bring up is just the parking. We're proposing 1.5 parking spaces per unit. I believe the city's requirement is 2. We've looked up, again, some industry data. The ITE does dozens and dozens of studies on sites just like this for apartment buildings. And typically what they're seeing is a parking rate of 1.45 spaces per unit. 2 is typically seen as sort of high for as far as parking demand. I think an important thing when looking at residential developments like this with all the green space that we're proposing is to not over park the site, not put too much pavement where you could have green space. Again, dozens and dozens of ITE studies show that 1.45 spaces is sufficient for a residential development like this. Also, I think important to bring up, we do have at least 1 parking space per bedroom, which isn't always the case. Sometimes a 2-bedroom only gets 1 parking space. We do have 1 parking space at minimum per bedroom.
Thank you, appreciate it. So kind of going into the parking requirement. So as Mr. Kennedy explained, we're obviously aware that the ordinance has 2 parking spaces per unit, but we are requesting right now for the PC to reduce, which I believe is allowable per the ordinance, to 1.5. And I think, you know, it goes into a couple things. One, we're very confident that, you know, we have adequate parking. So we wouldn't be making this type of investment if we didn't think that the project was viable, not just from a green space, amenities, and you know, all of the experiences, but obviously parking goes into that. So, you know, tonight we were hoping to get, you know, this grant to reduce the 25% to get to 1.5. And so if we were to get to the 1.5, we would obviously need 218 spots. And so right now we've got roughly 200 spots, but there is an encroachment license that we've gone through the process, which is just on this parking up here that we're going to be, which is obviously also allowable, you know, at our expense to add those 18, which is basically adjacent to the site. I think the other thing to kind of keep in mind, yeah, you can kind of see that this is all, you know, contained within the site itself, and then we're also going to be adding on these 18 spots to get to the 1.5, and so we feel comfortable that this is going to, you know, exceed the parking requirement based on our traffic study, and also our market study also supports the 1.5 is adequate. The other thing to keep in mind is that because we control the commercial properties across the street, and with the crosswalks that are going to be installed with the traffic lights, you know, there is going to be event and a commercial element to the building at certain times, and so having the parking available from the Ashley Stewart, you know, Panera and Oakland Development site, especially like when you're throwing an event. I mean, these we're anticipating that a lot of these spaces are going to be available, and we would enter into, you know, easement or parking agreements, kind of like you know, we've done with the Panera if needed, which would again have hundreds of parking spots. And then the other conversations that we've started are with the church, which is just to the north, and again, you know, looking to arrange some kind of a lease agreement or something like that. We've just kind of had, you know, conversations, and the fellowship, I believe, has expressed an openness into allowing us to lease some of those spots. But again, if there's some kind of an event or something like that at the school, you know, there's obviously an opportunity for us to have valet and things like that as well. So I feel like, you know, we've done a lot of our homework with the traffic study, with the parking counts, et cetera, to have parking covered. So here, you know, we've obviously spent, you know, time with various committees. So we've met with the tree committee. We're looking to collaborate with the Parks and Rec. And again, I think that this kind of goes into, and we're not limiting to just the trees. There's a lot of, you know, landscaping committees on here. There's other committees that we'd be willing to work with. But again, really trying to beautify, you know, Annie Lathrup Park, the municipal park. There's certain ordinances that require us to have landscaping, which we've submitted. But in meeting with the tree committee, you know, we've heard that, you know, maple may not be, you know, the first choice. So again, like, this is something where, you know, we're always open to collaborating with the community to try and make sure that, you know, this is a process where we feel like, you know, the folks that, you know, have been in this community are involved and feel like they're a part of it.
Okay, we're rounding home. This is the final summary. And again, you know, speaking for all of us, we know there was a lot. I appreciate everyone's attention. We wanted to include a lot of detail tonight because we know that there's a lot of questions about this project. And I know we're not going to get everyone as excited about it as we are, but we're really excited about the potential here because we think this can be something that can set this community up for success for decades to come, and can be something that everyone can participate in and can be proud of. Our mission as a company is to create places for people to thrive. And that's what we want to do with the school. And that's what we wanted to showcase with the in-depthness of this presentation tonight. So I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for taking the time and listening to it. Hopefully we were able to keep it like educational and interesting and fun throughout the way. But just a summary of the whole thing, and I'll turn over to Sam for his closing remarks. This is a rehabilitation of a historic structure into something that's beautiful, and we are going to make sure that it's going to be incredible for everyone to be part of. It's going to have active and open green spaces, both on-site and off-property. They're going to be enhanced. It's consistent with the master plan to a T, as much as we can. There's low housing, there's high demand, there's old housing here. The population is declining, costs are rising, and the existing house is low rated. So for all these reasons, we believe that this project will be a tremendous success and something that we can all be really proud of. And I'll turn over to Sam for conclusion.
I don't know how I'm going to beat that, but I mean, I think that that pretty much summarizes it. We're committed to, this development. We think that this is going to be a catalyst for a lot of great things to happen in Lathrup Village. It's really tough for people right now to find apartments that are attainable. I mean, going to Birmingham and spending $5,000 to $20,000 a month on an apartment is just outrageous. And we think that we could take advantage of really decommoditizing this, making it a standout development from a lot of other apartments that we talked about. Not only will it be new and A-rated, but I think the school will be a fantastic amenity. I think it'll drive more businesses. It'll allow families to come in. It'll allow other people that don't want to deal with maintaining their home. And I think that this is going to be a great option, and it's really going to help put this community on the map while preserving the charm and the beauty of all the neighborhoods. So I know there's going to probably be more review, so we'll stick around, and I'm sure we'll probably have to answer other questions, but let's make it happen.
Thank you. Are you all going to be right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I can turn back over.
Yes.
Now that everybody on the commission has had an opportunity to see the plan, are there any questions for the applicant from the commission?
Yes, we'll open to public comment, and then
Well, we haven't had a chance. This is the first time we've seen the final plan. So just before we open it up to public comment, at least let the commissioners get to ask their question. We can still discuss it after, understanding that the public comment is a public comment. They can make a public comment, but we're not going to respond to that, and there's no reason for them not to hear what our concerns are before we have it. So unless we had questions, the applicant is here. So if any of the commissioners have questions.
First of all, there were 4 words in your presentation that kind of jumped out because they addressed a point of confusion I've had about the project, and maybe some of the people here do too. The language has been ambiguous in the use of the reference of the project to the street. And you said it's got to be built up to the street, and some of the language in the plan used is in the city plan. Seems to imply that. And even one of the diagrams we saw, it had the street right up next to the sidewalk. And turns out what you mean by that is up to the right-of-way.
Correct.
Which is 32 feet from the actual street.
Right.
So I'm not alarmed about that. I just wanted you to confirm that. The business plan for the school building is just folded into the rent, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I know that HVAC is going to be an expense. You're certainly not resuscitating the existing system, I'm sure. What are you doing to have a modern, efficient system for HVAC?
Sure. So, the existing system, the boiler is in pretty bad shape. It's going to be a challenge to probably dispose of that thing. But Kevin, if you want to go in, I know we're going to have new split systems, mini splits, furnaces, AC units for each apartment, and then a component that's going to handle the hallways and the common areas.
He did it great, but I'll elaborate just a little bit. Obviously, everything that we do today is, in a high energy efficiency for each of the apartments. All of that has to be individual units. You cannot combine air systems for apartment users, so it's not a one large system that handles the building. Each unit will have its own system and its own exhaust, heat, air conditioning. And so it's easier for those to be, more specifically controlled to the residents that are there, and that way, you're not overheating, overcooling for the general public, but it's much more efficiency on the
I
individual.
was really asking the question about the school.
The school will be a totally separate system. It'll be, again, the systems we're looking at are very high energy efficient system. We will be using probably a boiler system. It has a high energy efficiency rating. We are not doing a LEED certified building, but the elements of the building in terms of materials, windows, insulation, other elements, plumbing fixtures, how we're handling all of those things. We are keeping them to the same level that we do, that we have done in a couple of recent LEED rated projects, again, to keep this development up at that level, but without going to the certification.
I'll also add, I mean, based on the comment about the amenities being folded into the rent, it's obviously, our incentive to try and keep all the systems are going to be brand new, and being energy efficient is vital in order to keep those costs under control. And of course, everything's going to be built to code, so.
One more question. I was pleased to see that you included 2 charging stations. But what happens if the 3rd and 4th tenant want to charge their car overnight, and the 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th? Is it easy to expand, or is that going to be it?
Well, there's lots of like rebates and incentives of the state of Michigan, but one of the other things that we mentioned is that, this isn't going to be this is going to be a managed building. So as Jordan mentioned, we're going to have on-site staff, at least a property manager that's most likely going to be living in one of the units. So having someone on site 24/7 is going to be able to, monitor and enforce and make sure that the car charging is, rationed out appropriately. And if necessary, there's lots of different programs that we can use to expand those.
And if the idea here with fewer units would be a quick charge unit, so that you're not looking at hours, you're looking at very short time periods, so that they have a faster turnover.
There's like various levels. There's like the trickle charger, which takes hours. Then there's like the supercharger, which takes minutes. We're probably going to go into the one into just the fast charger, which is kind of in between those two.
I have some questions, comments.
Is you finished?
That's fine.
Are you finished?
Go ahead.
Okay. But before I do, Les, a question for you. Do you anticipate that after our commentary here and after public hearing, we'll be able to ask more questions, or do I need to front load everything here?
No, we can ask more questions.
Okay, thank you.
It's our meeting, we can ask more questions.
Thank you. Before my questions, a few comments. As you know, at our most recent, or maybe 2 planning commission meetings ago, we amended our ordinances to allow for first floor residential so long as certain criteria are met. I was optimistic and hopeful that you would respond to those criteria. I did not expect an hour-long presentation responding to those criteria, so thank you for taking that so seriously, and thank you for being so diligent in your presentation of it. I expected a few talking points, not several dozen slides, so thank you for honoring the requirement to speak to those requirements, and I suppose it would be our job later to decide if those requirements were met. So thank you for doing that. Also, I know that the Historic District Committee already approved your site plan, and so you could have effectively done nothing else to accommodate their concerns beyond that approval. But I appreciate your kind of continued application of their input to increase the scale of that notch to expose more of the historic structure. I know that so much of the Historic District Committee's concern and so much of the community's concern was that the apartment wings that flank the south and north end of the historic structure overwhelm or obscure the historic structure from Southfield Road. And I appreciate you for going above and beyond the approval you already received to open that up even more, exposing the beauty and architectural integrity of the historic site itself. So thank you for doing that. And last, I'm not sure that previous iterations of the site plan we've seen saw the scale of the green buffer space you've proposed between the parking lot and Annie Lathrup Park. I'm not sure if that's a new addition or just something I missed. But I know, because some of them have told me, that you've worked alongside our tree committee to heed their advice and improve and enhance the amount of green space and the quality of green space that your site plan includes. So thank you for doing that. It certainly wasn't a requirement. We could have decided on it without those additions, but I appreciate them nonetheless. So thank you. My first question is about parking. I took some time to do quick research about what parking requirements look like in neighboring communities such as Oak Park, Berkeley, Southfield, Birmingham, in the village of Beverly Hills. As is our 2-spot per dwelling requirement, for what it's worth, is slightly on the stricter end of those communities' requirements. Your proposed 1.5 parking spots per dwelling is on the more liberal end of those communities' requirements that I observed. However, and you touched on this a bit, but I'd like you to speak to it a little bit more. You've proposed a site plan that is more than just residential towers. You've talked a lot about events that might occur in those spaces, and also leasable co-working type office spaces that non-residents will utilize. And I'd like you to say a little bit more about how you expect vehicles attending events or going to work in this site. Where will they fit, assuming you've kind of only met the bare minimum of parking spaces required for residents themselves?
Sure. So one of the things that we had touched on, because that's a very valid point, depending on the event, there may have to be a valet element, only because of the fact that you're kind of pulling around to the new, residential, or the new tenant entrance of the school. However, we've got, I'd see some 500 parking spots at our various properties directly across the street with traffic lights and hawk signals. And as we also touched on, looking to lease spaces from the property to the north, which we've, engaged in conversations there. So we believe that, yes, it may, the 1.5 to the 1.45 is obviously meeting what we feel is required, and it's just slightly above that. But I think that the unique situation is that, this development also has, properties that are owned by the same person that are, basically right next to it that have, more than enough overflow parking. So, you want to say something? Go ahead.
And one other thing to add, I think that's a totally fair question, but it also should be put in context of, if parking is an issue, then that means that the units are fully sold out, that everybody who rents apartments has cars up to the 1.5 limit, and that there's people coming in and using the community spaces, co-working spaces, and we're doing events. So in that situation where we have to go to overflow parking, which fits with the master plan for creating this walking area of the historic district, that's actually I understand we need a plan for it, but it's also a great outcome, because it means that the space is leased and residents of the community are able to use it and are finding benefit from it. So it's the intended purpose of it all, and which is why we looked at the ordinances to make sure within 500 feet, and we're in the process with the church. Hopefully we're going to make some really good progress there as well in terms of leasing spaces on a per use basis for it.
Within the year, this commission approved a site plan for a small business that required very few parking spots. It was something like 10. But there were not 10 parking spots to accommodate them. So we were pretty strict on that small business and required them to, in advance, provide us copies of the shared parking agreements that pertain to not only the business owner, and I realize Cerno Group owns, for example, the shopping plaza in which Lane Bryant exists, but also the tenants of those commercial spaces. Do you already have shared parking agreements in place, or are those shared parking agreements just something you expect to put in place? And would it be reasonable, in your opinion, for this commission to, assuming we approve this plan, who knows if we will or not, to make a condition of that approval proof of said shared parking agreements with tenants as well as with the Cerno Group? Because of course the Cerno Group will sign these shared parking agreements.
Right. I mean, it's really not, a lot of our tenants have been with us, you know, for over 30 years. So it wouldn't be in our best interest to harm the businesses, but it's not reasonable for us to go and get sign off from the tenant businesses that don't own the parking. I mean, as long as we actually have the parking capacity, you know, we would be more than happy to furnish those parking agreements to the commission.
Okay.
But I hope that makes sense. It's just not something where it would, I'm trying to think of like the best analogy for it, but it wouldn't be something that we would be looking for sign off from. But of course, we would have to spend time, you know, going and explaining the situation, but we wouldn't allow it to get to the point where it would negatively impact our businesses. Otherwise, there wouldn't, you know, it would be counterproductive.
Oh, I'd also add, there's probably no one rooting harder for this project to pass than the businesses on the other side of the road who are looking at this as an opportunity for them to grow as well. So more people coming and parking in their lot and spending time at their business or walking across the street is for them being viewed as a positive.
Right, as a traffic generator. Yep. Good point.
Okay. A few more questions related to parking. Of course, 18 of the spots in your site plan are along Golden Gate Drive. Do those spots narrow or otherwise infringe on the width of Golden Gate Drive, or will they be carved out of existing green space? Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're currently carved out of what is existing green space there. They don't, and are not allowed to encroach into the roadway as it is.
It'll still be a two-way street.
Sure. However, the land on which these parking spots will exist is not land owned by the Cerno Group. Is that correct? It's
right away. Yeah.
It's right away. Okay. And so, as a matter of order, I suppose, it would not be this commission's decision for whether or not to allow these 18 spots along Golden Gate Drive. This would go to City Council, right? It's a matter of for them to decide.
Yes, that's correct. Temporary parking encroachment license are approved at the council level.
Okay. Those are all of my parking questions. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Not at this, yes, but not at this time.
Any questions from any other commissioner? Then we'll take this opportunity to open up the public hearing for 27700 Southfield Road. We need to put the ground rules in order. The public hearing speakers are for 3 minutes. The mic is there. As we said, please state your name and your street name. They've been instructed, they're going to have a timer on the screen, I believe, that shows the 3 minutes. The mic is controlled. After 3 minutes, the mic will cut off so that the next person can speak. I received a letter from one of our residents who watches this on a video, and they were very disappointed in how residents have been kind of disrespecting each other, and they're disappointed in the community as a whole. So I'm going to ask each person to be an adult and respect the person that speaks, wait until they finish, and don't comment on their comments, because they will not comment on yours. Keep in mind, the board does not respond to public comment. After the public comment, we will go back to our discussion. You ready? Oop, I don't think we're ready yet. Not quite there yet? All right, I'll set it on my computer so we can at least get started.
Karen Harris, Cambridge Boulevard. Thank you so much for such a comprehensive presentation. It's a lot more than I was expecting. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I felt like I understood it very well. And it just makes me excited. So wonderful to see something new and exciting and with purpose coming to the Lathrup Village. So I hope you guys aggrieves me to pass it through, but thank you.
Thank you.
I can start. Hi, Nancy Burchard, and I just wanted to say you guys did a great job. It looks like a beautiful place. I think my husband and I want to move there, free up some housing stock for you. But no, it's gorgeous, and I'm really looking forward to this. It's beautiful, and I love all the green spaces. Thanks a lot.
Hello, Pam Schermeyer. I live on Lathrup Boulevard in the northeast quadrant here. First of all, thank you to the Planning Commission for hosting this public forum, and to the Cerno Group. I'm really impressed by your commitment to hearing, really truly hearing what the community has to say and altering your plans in light of that. I really have just one quick question about the traffic situation. I was thrilled to see the no right turn sign that's going to be posted to steer people away from the neighborhood and out to Southfield Road. My question is that the only egress out of the parking lot, or is there a southern route that would take you to Sunset Boulevard or some other way? And if so, would that have a similar sign, routing traffic towards Southfield and away from the neighborhood? Thank you.
Hi, Mary Manuki, and I live on Redwood. First of all, I just want to thank Sam and Jordan for meeting with me yesterday and letting me share my late husband and my late son's story with you. And thank you for the reassurance that my husband's tree that was planted and dedicated by me in 1997 will not be cut down, because on every plan it's X'd out that it's going to go. The other question, and you know I'm a worrier, I told you I was, so until I see it in the plan that it's not X'd out, I'm going to worry about it. My other question is, how much of a buffer zone is there going to be between the parking lot and that path? I mean, because your drawings show the cars right up over the path.
So I think I can
Nope.
answer to that. I mean,
Nope.
not answer.
Nope.
Oh, we're not answering. I'm sorry.
The commission will have to address that question.
No answer. So the parking can go right up over the path? Is that what you're saying?
No, what we're saying is that he can't respond during the public comment.
Hello, my name is Carol Green, and I live on Lathrup Boulevard. And I too am concerned about the traffic, although I was happy to see the plan for a no right turn sign and the geometry of the driveway kind of pointing towards Southfield Road. But I think we all know that people don't often choose not to obey those kind of things. So it's still a concern, and also when they're coming home, if they're coming from 12 Mile or 11 Mile, they're going to cut up Lathrup Boulevard, excuse me, to go into the dwelling that way. So the traffic is still very much a concern for me. Also, I know the gentleman addressed the infrastructure issue, but a few years ago, Chief Menifee from Southfield Fire Department was here and expressed concerns at that time about the water pressure and many of the hydrants here in Lathrup, and suggested that we open some of the dead ends that lead into Southfield so they could have access to those if they needed them. I reached out to the Southfield Fire Marshal recently, and Fire Marshal Townsell responded to me, and I'll quote what he said. He said, "Yes, I am aware of the proposed plans for the 4-story apartment complex to be located on Southfield Road. And yes, I have voiced my concerns regarding the demand that this project will place on the water distribution system of Lathrup. So I'm just putting that out there, that the safety of all of us that live here already and new residents, I'm sure, is important to you, and I just wanted to put that out there. Thirdly, regarding policing, I'm really happy to hear that there's a plan for 24-hour security. That's awesome. But I also am aware that our police department, I don't know if many of you know this, but for quite a while now has had unfilled positions for police officers. We do not have a full police force. As of today, Chief McKee told me there are 11 positions, full-time positions on our department, 2 of which are currently unfilled. And this has been an ongoing thing for quite a while. So that concerns me, again, about safety. And then the other thing was parking, and if people have visitors coming to see them, where are they gonna park? Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Shelley Reeves, and I live on California Northeast, so directly behind where the apartments will be. It was a great presentation. I loved the trees. It really appeared to me that my view wouldn't be obstructed, but I also know that the reality of full-grown trees being installed, that's probably not likely to happen. So I am interested if that is in your plan, or if this is just like a future depiction of what it'll look like in maybe 20 years or so. Also interested in the trash dumpster situation. I had looked at some early plans, and they may have changed by now, but there were trash depositories in the apartment building, so I'm wondering how that's gonna work. Or will you have several dumpsters throughout the parking lot? I agree that the no-turn sign isn't gonna likely deter anything. I myself don't really abide by those things. And I'm not a bad person, so I think it's not gonna do too much. But I also understand, if you live there, you wanna get where you wanna get, and that's your home too. So I think if we pretend that it's not going to be a traffic issue, we're kind of lying to ourselves. And I think statistically we could tell any kind of story with statistics. And I think that's what we were kind of doing there a little bit. Lathrup, we're told on a regular basis, has a revenue problem, not a spending problem. So I am interested in if it could be shared what the bottom line tax revenue benefit would be to the city. That's the most important thing, I think, to all of us when we're, being tagged for additional monies. What are we actually gaining besides all the nice benefits that you laid out tonight? And then I just want to address, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I did find it interesting that in order for this project to move forward, we had to bend our ordinance for the first floor living. And then now we're looking at changing another ordinance for parking. But we don't have to worry about that because it seems that we already have strategically placed parking hawk signals installed from an unrelated previous project. And you guys control that parking. So it just seems to me that it's all falling into place, and it could just be by the grace of God, I don't know. But, from the outside looking in, it just looks a little fishy. Thank you for your time.
Hi, good evening. My name is Phyllis Wyndham, and I live on Sunset Boulevard East that backs right up into the dog park and part of the area there. So I just wanted to say, you guys, it was very thorough, and it was answered a lot of questions that I was looking at. But as far as the greenery and all that stuff, my concern is I thought it was going to start pushing into too close to where it divides from the property. But it looks like it may be getting there, or it'll be there. And the view, as the last lady spoke about too, is the greenery in it. I don't know how long that's going to take to grow. But one big concern was the water pressure, because I'm right there. So I wanted to just emphasize, I hope that a lot of work will be done to make sure that is good, because I'm not an engineer, but I don't know how that affects the other part of the property. But I already, when it rains, I get a swimming pool pretty much around my property and on the streets and everything. It takes a while to drain, so I hope that that's going to be really looked at strongly. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Maureen Mitchell-Tardivy. I live on San Jose, and thank you for the presentation. And I wanted to thank you. I'm sorry I don't know your name, that gentleman. Yeah, the one who spoke about parking, you. And I really appreciate you bringing that all up, because I do have friends who even have businesses on Southfield Road, and I can't imagine that they're going to want other people parking there because there's some function going on when they have a business to run. And so I really see parking as very much a problem, and especially with the people you're attracting, or so-called attracting, they're all business people. They're all going to need cars. Chances are there'll be at least 2 people maybe in the apartments, and I do see it being a problem. It won't affect me as much because I'm in the back area, but it will affect, I think, the streets, Southfield Road, and I avoid it already as much as possible. So just wanted to say thank you, and thank you to you too.
Hi, Autumn Susannis. I live on Rainbow Drive. The packets are from Diane, who you're familiar with, who couldn't be here. She's at a ACLU meeting. One thing I'd like to start out by saying is great presentation. I'm disappointed, however, to see so many slides and references to events. We saw the stage. If you look at the site plan that was presented, the most updated one, there is no stage. There will not be a stage. According to this site plan, there will be 4 bathrooms in that footprint. So that seems disingenuous to me to refer to a stage. It also seems disingenuous to me to refer to a cafe. At least twice I heard the word cafe. There's no cafe. There is a hallway with a countertop. There's no kitchen. There's no place to get water that I can see from looking at the site plan, except maybe from the bathrooms where the stage used to be, according to this plan. It's interesting to me that we are hearing that this has been redesigned and worked on for years and it's been vacant, but the reason it's been vacant is on the Cernows. The Cernows took possession, bought this building. We have the deed from 1992. So for 33 years, it has been allowed to fall into the state of disrepair it is currently. It has been vacant for the last decade plus, and that is on you guys. You guys did that. It's not like a fluke. It's entirely on you. It would be wonderful to see it turned into something that the community can use. Now, the parking lot is, according to your site plan, has security gates on both entrances and exits. So it's not open to the public. The green space that's back there is not going to be public green space for the community. That's going to be for the residents. And the open spot in front of the building is right on Southfield Road, where, as everyone knows, the traffic roars past. That's not going to be a comfortable hangout space. That's not for the residents of Lathrop, the stakeholders, the people who have been paying taxes. We're not hearing about the pilot plan. We're very curious about that tax incentive, tax break plan. You guys, last time you offered us 4%. And then Akiva is Surnow. I would like that to be clarified. We have the deed that says, actually it's records from Pontiac saying that Surnow is the parent company of Akiva. Anyhow, I want an art center. I want a rec center. That's what I want. Thank you. This isn't it.
Hi, Reed Bosky. I live on Wiltshire Boulevard. First off, just want to say thanks for the in-depth presentation. Also, thanks for coming to the tree committee to ask for our input on the landscaping and everything. I think that shows great initiative. I like the project overall. I approve. I think it's great. I think it's a good investment for the future of the city long term, and I would like to see more things like that. One thing I wanted to note, I would like to see less turf grass in the design. We've got a big park right there that is part of your presentation. The residents can use. And I don't imagine people sitting on the lawn there like in the mock-ups. People don't really do that. Why not put something like a pollinator garden in? Something else to consider, the park building in Plymouth is a rehabilitated school. I would check it out. Friends of the Rouge's office is there. They've totally redone the parking lot as a series of rain gardens and regraded the whole thing so that they don't have to put any, overflow into the storm system. Long term, it's a huge money saver. So I would recommend looking into things like that. One other idea was, as far as the no right turn thing, I think a lot of people are just going to go with whatever their navigator says is the fastest. So if there's any way that you can contact navigation apps and say, legally they can't turn right here, then maybe that will be less of an issue. Agreed with Autumn that I don't think a plaza in front of the building on Southfield Freeway road is going to be used. Even with a dense cover of trees and shrubs, it's just so noisy, and there's increasing concern about things like plastics and carcinogens in the air around roads. So I would like, I think it's great to have green space, but maybe do something more like a garden or something like that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Baladian, and I live on Roseland. I came tonight because I had heard rumors or read articles about past presentations, discussions. So this was very much a detailed presentation, and it's very different than what I've heard, because I heard it was all related to low income. And I guess you guys have proven tonight that that is not the case. Thank you. I do have a question about, how do you have 1.5 places per parking? You either have 1 or 2, so I don't understand 1.5. That's just me. The other thing is, you had a slide or several slides about the 5-mile radius around us and the buildings. And I don't remember what it's called, but where St. Bede's used to be at 12 in Southfield, they built apartments back there. I don't know what the rents go for there, and you guys had your target monthly rates. And my question is, in order to elevate something like this and not make us kind of, and I say not make us, Lathrop Village, kind of a second rate, because I do feel that we're second rate in a lot of people's eyes, elevate the rents. Because if we're lower than what they are and they're already several years old, we should be more money, because if there is a demand, people will pay. And I think that also helps enhance who we attract to live in that place. Your interior concept is interesting. I'm familiar with the interior of it because I went to elementary school there, so that's how long I've been around. I'm familiar with the gym and the architecture of the gym inside, and it is a wonderful place. It's an interesting concept that you have, but again, the parking, what you can target for, and my other thing is too, you say it would attract other businesses. I think Lathrop has, for other factors and other reasons, has an issue in attracting and maintaining certain types of businesses. When I was coming here, I noticed across the street, again, that building, I believe is, again, the restaurant closed. It's not there anymore. That was Jaybird's or something. So, and I think the other thing is that I know Lathrop at one time tried to work with the county road commission to slow the traffic down, and the county wouldn't do that. People drive too fast on Southfield to pay attention to what is really on the two sides, on the east side, on the west side. So for businesses really to come in to Lathrop and establish themselves, I think is a challenge. Thanks.
Alicia Lundell, San Jose Boulevard. I just wanted to mention that one of the first meetings I attended, the site plan included overflow parking in the triangle area across the street, and I'm really glad to see that that is not happening. And I don't have a problem with the 18 spaces along Golden Gate Drive as long as the city council approves that. As far as 1.5 sites, there's going to be some apartments that only have 1 car, some apartments that have 2 cars, and it's maybe in the evening they're all going to be there, but the traffic comes and goes, people work different hours, so I think most likely that it will work with the 1.5. And I do like your plan. Thank you.
John Roberts, I live on Lathrup Boulevard. Also the executive officer over at the church, the Community Congregational Church. A couple of areas that I'm kind of familiar with that I've tried to be involved with here to help move forward any project for the school. First off, there was the idea of recognizing that there are memorial trees behind the space, and some of the original plans which indicated 25% of the trees on the site were going to be cut down. Glad to meet with you guys and find out that indeed it is not your intention to destroy any of the memorial trees that exist. And thank you for the Cernos for guaranteeing that and actually putting that in writing for one of our people who was quite concerned about her husband's plot. The other item has to do with parking. Quite honestly, we're in talks with Cerno now to allow overflow parking there, not as permanent for the residents that are there, but for any events that might take place. And it's really only to rent spots that would be not in use at that time. We have services that meet at certain times, but there's a lot of times when the parking lot's empty. And during those times, if overflow might occur, like for the Lathrup Village Music Festival or something else, they'd be available for that. And we're actively in that thing, and I got to tell you, they're very enthusiastic about accepting that offer, sir. Thanks very much.
Was there anyone else for the public hearing regarding the school property? If not, we'll close the public hearing at this time and turn the discussion back over to the commissioners. If you have any additional questions regarding the site plan to the...
I do have an additional question. A number of residents have brought up parking, and we discussed parking a lot. So my question is, will parking permits be purchased by residents or allocated by some other process according to the occupancy of the unit that they're renting? How do you intend to regulate that 1.5 concept?
I'm allowed to respond. Yeah, we'll have parking permits. Absolutely. Every tenant that comes in is going to have to register their car, license plate. We're obviously going to have surveillance. So this is actually one of the things that we've, spoken about, with the police is giving them access to our cameras, not necessarily to just enforce the laws and just to monitor the, obviously all the activity at the school, but it's having really good cameras and license plate readers and things like that are going to allow us to not only, handle a lot of the security functions, but fold into the parking enforcement as well. So it'll all be permitted.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, is my microphone on? Okay. As a follow-up to that, I did the math, and it looks like for all of the 2-bedroom units, there are enough spots for 2 parking spots, and for all of the 1-bedroom units, there are enough spots for 1 bedroom. Will that be an element of this allocation process? Is it like 2 bedrooms equal 2 spots, or is it less specific than that?
No, I mean, that's like, I think, a good general rule of thumb. There's going to essentially, that's a very good, overall assessment. But yeah, if you're in a 1-bedroom, you're at least going to get 1. And then depending on, some units may not have a car at all. I mean, it depends. Some people may rely on public transportation. We're anticipating, every unit to at least have 1 parking spot, but we don't anticipate all of the 2 bedrooms necessarily needing 2 cars, depending on, the demographic of who's there. We're finding that a lot of households, only have 1 car. And so if there's a 1-bedroom that requires more than 1 car and we have the availability, then it'll be, kind of under our control to grant somebody more parking. And, these are also going to be, it's not like we're going in and signing, 5-year leases. A lot of these apartment units are going to go probably for around a year at least, with, the ability to stay and renew. And so as these leases come up, we'll get, a better feel for the parking demand and then be able to, administer those parking passes accordingly, if that makes sense.
You asked the question.
I have non-parking related question for once. And I'm not sure it's a question for you, the Cerno Group. I think this is a question for you, Scott. A few folks in their public comment brought up, Autumn brought up pilot payment in lieu of taxes, and I think Shelley brought up potential tax revenue, property tax revenue that a proposal like a site like this might generate. My question is a matter of this commission's purview. As I understand it, the Planning Commission is here to make decisions based on the ordinances and the master plan we have in place. Should we be considerate? Can we be considerate of how a project is funded or how a project will eventually fund the city or the downtown district? Is that part of our consideration tonight? Should it be?
So to answer that question, should this body be considered of it? Absolutely, it's something you can consider in a general sense, that this is a project that's happening in the city. How is this going to impact the city? You just earlier worked on the capital improvement plan, so you are have some input on the finances of the city, or at least how you like to see those dollars allocated. Specifically with respect to the site plan, that there are 20 criteria that are enumerated in the planning ordinance, the zoning ordinance section 6.1.5. Not one of those criteria, and I can go through them just for the audience that's not listening, but none of those criteria involve the financial impacts to the city. So when it comes to making your decision based on the site plan, these criteria, and I'll go through the categories again, completeness of the site plan that was presented, site design characteristics, appearance, compliance with district requirements, preservation of natural areas, privacy, emergency vehicle access, ingress and egress, pedestrian circulation, vehicular and pedestrian circulation, drainage, site erosion, exterior lighting, public service, landscape screening, potential dangers or hazards from on-site activity, health and safety concerns, the sequencing of the development project, coordination with adjacent sites, and zoning district design guidelines. Those are the 20 criteria that this body will evaluate the site plan that was submitted and make their decision based upon compliance and sufficient meeting those criteria. So there was no mention about the interior features of the development. There's no mention of the financial impact to the city from the development, potential tax revenue. So while in some sense, yes, it is good to recognize and understand that that is a component of this because it overall health of the city from a financial perspective, but it's not one of the determining criteria that this body will use to evaluate the site plan that was submitted.
Thank you. As a follow-up, as it relates to pilots specifically, and I promise I'm not asking these questions to deflect. I'm asking these questions because if residents have concerns, I want to make sure they're addressing these questions to the appropriate body. As it relates to pilot, if, for example, pilot was approved for this site plan or any other, it's the city council, correct, that would approve pilot, not this or any other commission?
That is correct. That would be within the purview of the city council to make that determination.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Questions?
Yes, I have a few more. As it pertains to building materials, Eric, I think this might be a question for you. It seemed unclear, based on your review, if this site plan is in compliance in terms of the building materials on the facade of the building. Are there any updates or new insight into that?
Not since the current letter has been drafted. So there was improvements that were made upon final review of the site plan and the elevations and whatnot. There's a statement in our review letter that asks for the applicant to confirm the actual percentage of the allowable materials, which is 90%. So it's just a matter of confirming that standard within the ordinance moving forward. But ultimately, there has been improvements of the materials that are allowed. I believe as it relates to a metal facade on portions of the two different buildings has been changed.
Okay. So now to the Cerno Group. Do you have any understanding of whether or not this site plan does in fact comply with the 90% building material requirement?
Yes, I believe we do, and I believe all of the materials as they currently meet our approved materials under the ordinance. The metal that he's talking about has been adjusted to a similar appearance on a hardy batten, vertical batten material. So those materials in two different fashions, as well as the brick make up really the entire buildings except for the window area.
Eric, maybe you can help me out with this question because I'm not going to be able to find it in this long document. There is something out of compliance as it relates to corner buildings and a requirement that there's some type of architectural interest or flourish to the corner buildings that, according to your determination, are not quite met. Can you say more about what those architectural elements might be and why, in Giffords' opinion, they're not currently there?
So what's stated within the ordinance for what you speak of in terms of proposing buildings up to the street within the village center district, it more or less is a focal point of the building. So for example, I think it mentions like a tower type of structure, clock tower, some sort of element of the building that would draw a focal point to the corner of the development. And so based on the plans and the renderings that we've seen, there is no particular draw to the buildings that are proposed at the corners of the two intersections. And so, again, that's something for the Planning Commission to take into consideration when analyzing that specific standard within the ordinance.
If I might comment on that, just in this particular instance, we really feel that our focus is internal to the middle of this site because of the historic building. And that's really where the visual point should be and is on this development, and not on the ends, not on those areas. So that was, intentional to make sure that, as part of this overall, visual direction that we're focusing on the center of the project.
I'm curious if any commissioners are concerned about the absence of these architectural features, or if...
I was going to raise his point.
Okay. I've got one more, and then I promise I'll shut up. We heard from a few engineers regarding things like drainage, traffic patterns, et cetera. Mike Green, I hate to put you on the spot, but in the January 31st newsletter, you also remarked on topics such as these. What I'm curious to know is what you composed in the January 31st newsletter, is that coming from the same sources that we heard from tonight, or are these kind of analogous and separate sources that attested to these things in the January 31st newsletter? Sorry.
Yeah, so those sources we use in the newsletter are our engineers. So naturally, they have their independent engineers who did their own studies and presented you with the material tonight. We used our engineers at Giffords to review the site plan as we had it presented, and all that data and information was presented in there. Additionally, with our engineers, we got feedback from the police, the fire department, and the Water Resource Commission, who oversees our sanitary retention tank. So they're independent of one another.
Sure. I think the most resounding bit of feedback I remember coming from the community, and it occurred again tonight, is concerns over water pressure / flow, and particularly how that relates to the unfortunate potential of a fire. Could you, or potentially the gentleman who spoke from the engineering firm earlier, say a little bit more about why we, and also they, should not be concerned about fire suppression?
Yeah, so from the city's perspective, it's all the updates the city's had made since 2020 when the city approved the bond. So naturally updating all the water mains and things like that. Additionally, the upcoming projects such as opening the 12-mile meter plus redoing the massive water main in front of the site is going to increase water flow specifically for the north part of the city. As for fire suppression and anything like that, I'd have to defer to them. That's something that's typically reviewed and finalized after site plan approval. They'll have their own experts create a fire suppression system that will meet all building codes and be reviewed by us at that point. Once we have that, we'll know for sure if any changes need to be made. But unless they've gone ahead and got a few steps ahead, that's typically something that's done after site plan.
Okay. Thank you. I lied. I actually have one more question because somebody asked about entry in and exit out of the property. I'm sorry, ma'am. It was you. I forgot your name. What's your name? Say your name again. Pam, okay. Pam was curious, because you did go into detail about how people will exit and enter at the north end of the building. Is there a similar something on the south end of the building? How will that work?
Talk about the access.
Yeah, there's access south and north, and as he was talking about the traffic, that gives a good split between the two entrances onto Southfield Road. So from the sign standpoint, that was addressed on the northern drive, I think that where the larger concern was there. But you know, if there was some similar concern, I mean, we can always address something there. But we're assuming that, you know, roughly 50% could go out either direction. It probably depends on where you park and where you come from, whether you come from the north or the south.
It's a dead end.
Right.
You can get in and out of the proposed development, but you can't get into the residential because it's a dead end.
Right. So to Shelley's point, I appreciate Shelley for acknowledging that she sometimes ignores those signs. There is no potential for Shelley to turn left into the neighborhood out of this complex, unless, of course, she wants to drive through the dog park and all that stuff. Okay, got it. Thank you.
And we brought the no right turn up to the police and think it could be. I know there are people who aren't going to abide by it, but it could also be a revenue generator for the city if we enforce it. Based on some people's feedback.
And the last question? I'm sure, there's one more. No. Any other questions from the other side here? One of the things that came up is obviously the commission has to agree and approve the 25% reduction for parking in order for them to hit the 1.5. Right there?
Yes, I was just going to add that. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. That is part of the Planning Commission's consideration, that understanding that the overall parking requirement for the proposed development is 290 spaces, and that the reduction down to 218 factors in the fact that the Planning Commission would grant a waiver for 25% reduction of that.
And the waiver can be based on the studies that were done that support it.
Correct. All the information that was given tonight would be justification to
Grant the waiver.
Pardon me?
Will be justification to grant the waiver.
Correct. Okay. For the Planning Commission to consider that as justification to grant the waiver.
Okay.
And at this point, I think I want to add too, because there has been some discussion regarding shared parking and shared parking agreements and the timing of when those agreements would have to be solidified before being applicable to this site plan. The shared parking agreements would only be required to be recorded if the applicant was seeking to utilize those shared parking requirements to reduce the required number of parking spaces. So because they're taking advantage or attempting to take advantage of the 25% reduction, they're not actually relying upon those shared parking agreements to meet their minimum number of parking spaces. It's just that they've provided that information to address concerns about the commercial aspect of the development and how they intend to accommodate those parking needs. Again, that's different from the minimum requirement, so I just wanted to make that point.
That's right, and thank you for making that distinction. I was making it too analogous to the previous site plan I was referring to, and that makes total sense to me. I will ask, however, to the Cerno group, because you were so generous in further considering the Historic District Commission's input, even beyond their approval, I really would appreciate it as a measure of good faith that you go ahead and provide those regardless. I think it will just be well received if we can feel rest assured that those shared parking agreements are in place in the event that there are events, et cetera, at this site.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
So we plan on having those shared parking agreements, and again, you know, when it comes to the actual agreements with the tenants, I mean, those are technically in place, but it's also, you know, there could be different business managers and things like that. I mean, you know, some of these entities are corporate entities where we actually already have those agreements in place with the tenants to be able to control the parking. But again, like family company, community oriented, we manage everything in-house. It's not like we haven't gone to our tenants and our business community and told them about this development. And it actually, like, I think practically it kind of works out because like when it comes to the commercial side, to the co-working side, that co-working space and a couple of those classrooms, people are most likely going to be using those co-working spaces during the day when a lot of the residents have actually left and already gone to work. So we'll have the shared parking agreements in place anyway in case there is overflow, and we'll have, permanent on-site staff to help monitor the parking and coordinate and things like that. But we don't necessarily see it as being something, it's really a backup plan. And I think that, even for the events, if we were to have, excuse me, like an evening event or something like that, at the school or some kind of a function, a lot of those businesses, especially like on the retail, may not even be open. So a lot of those parking lots are mostly empty at those times. But again, this is something that, the business community across the street is extremely supportive of, because that's going to be a big traffic generator for the area. So long answer short, we're going to have those agreements in place and try and just go above and beyond to make sure that we're covered.
Thank you.
We also need to keep in mind that the 18 spots, if the site plan is approved, the 18 spots, it'll be contingent on the city council approving those 18 spots. Or without the 18 spots, then the shared parking kicks in, because you won't have enough spots without the shared parking agreement if the city does not approve the 18 spots. We have to make sure that's included. If there are no other questions from any of the commissioners for the applicant, or any other discussion among the commissioners, at this point, we have to make a motion to approve the site plan with the contingencies of the 25% reduction based on the studies that were presented, along with the contingent with the city council approving the 18 spots, or a motion to not approve the site plan at all, or another motion.
I feel comfortable. I'm going to give this a crack, Les. I'm going to try to make a motion right now. I would move that our commission recommend the site plan and approve, and given the 25% reduction in parking that the applicant is seeking, with the stipulation that city council approves the 18 necessary spots on the north side of the building to satisfy the 218 parking spot requirement.
I second.
Been moved in second. Did you get it, Ms. Clerk? It's the motion to approve the site plan with the 25% waiver for the parking, with the contingent that the city council will approve the 18 spots. That's what you said. That's what
Correct.
That was a question.
Yes, yes.
Oh, are we ready to vote? This will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, if I could just ask one, if we could, there's also a component that there are criteria that the applicant needs to demonstrate in order to qualify for first floor residential, which was pointed out in Giffords-Webster's review. Those 4 criteria: that the project involves rehabilitation of historic site, project satisfies the demonstrated need for housing, includes passive and active open spaces, and is consistent with the master plan. So if you could, I'd ask that we'd include that as
Include that in the motion.
part of the motion as well. Thank you.
I will amend my motion to include this motion that I make to approve the site plan with the 25% waiver in parking requirements, given the city's council's willingness to approve the 18 additional spots, that does satisfy the 4 previously stated requirements for the Planning Commission to approve first floor residences as presented this evening.
I still second.
Still second. Are we ready to vote? Ms. Clerk?
Okay. Commissioner Nordmo,
I support.
Commissioner Skussel,
I support.
Commissioner Disick,
Yes.
Commissioner Hillman.
I support.
What about Commissioner
I support it too.
Oh.
She always skips me for some reason.
Chair Stansberry.
Support. So anybody not supporting, since it's a unanimous decision here, that motion carries. This site plan is approved.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to item 8, other items for discussion, other matters for discussion.
I have, I got very loud very quickly. I have 2, and I'll make them very quick. One, there are several of us up here tonight who've been very present for so many of these discussions. I'm still concerned that Mr. Fobbs has not been here in a very long time. I, in fact, don't know him, never met the guy. So I do think this commission should consider how we might want to fill a vacancy that isn't officially a vacancy, but has definitely been one in practice. So for future meetings, I hope we can take that seriously and address it. And then finally, I don't know if Autumn is still here. She provided us this packet of documents that Diane Anderson has provided us already in different forums. And I want to say briefly that Diane and I disagree on a lot of fronts, but she does have an incredibly fervent passion for the history and the architectural history of this community, and I appreciate that about her. One of the documents in this packet talks about Louise Lathrup and a minor evolution she underwent in terms of architectural styles. As I think most of us know, when this city was founded, homes were required to be built in 3 different styles, and then a war happened, and times changed, and she eventually lightened up her iron fist and allowed for things like mid-century homes to be built in the city. She died before the mid-1960s, so she died thinking Southfield Road would become something it never became. She died before the passage of the Civil Rights Acts. She died before Lathrup Village had a single black resident. So whereas I appreciate, and we are now a majority black city, whereas I appreciate so many residents' fervent dedication to the history and architectural history of this community, I really, really do. I see a glimmer in this packet of our city's founder rolling with the times and changing. And I appreciate the Cerno Group for its dedication to combining our past with our future. I share Diane's strong appreciation and advocacy for the historic structure to my right, to our respective north. And I thank you for preserving it with the dignity that your plan does. And I'm counting on you to make true on all of the promises of this plan, especially as they relate to our city services and the demand on them, our city infrastructure and the demand on it, the green spaces, as well as some of the miscellaneous items we talked about, such as parking. So I don't think Diane would be happy with our decision today, but I'm sure she'll walk this back, and I want her to know that I've taken seriously the documents that she's presented to us, and we don't know how our city's founder would feel about this site plan. She died 50-something years ago, but I feel pretty good that this site plan combines Lathrup's past with Lathrup's future pretty beautifully, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. So, thank you.
As we move to general communication and item A.
Chairman Stansberry, before I get to our site development update for the month, part of our goal here, both on the commission and also with city leadership, elected city leadership, we are looking to reclaim our redevelopment ready certification through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And on that note, one of the items that we plan to present to the Planning Commission is regarding an ordinance addition Thomas Kennedy, our intern in the Community Economic Development and DDA department, has been working on very diligently in coordination with professors from the University of Michigan, and he is here to give a brief overview of that ordinance addition that will be coming shortly. So, Thomas?
Thank you, Wallace. Perfect. Thank you, Planning Commission. I appreciate your time. I do have a brief memo that I'm going to be reading off. It is available in your packets, and I promise I'm not going to deviate from this at all. 100%. So this memo serves to provide a preliminary update regarding upcoming ordinance changes, not just regarding solar energy systems ordinances, though I will be touching on that one first. A draft ordinance regarding the use of solar energy systems, also referred to as solar panels, for residential and commercial properties is being introduced, and we will be discussing it next month's meeting. It is important to note that solar panels have never been prohibited in the city of Lathrup Village. However, we have had concerns about scams affecting neighboring communities, and the city believes that it's in the community's best interest to establish regulations to protect all property owners. The ordinance will require the city to review solar installation plans, ensure safe installation practices, and safeguard homeowners, businesses, and the environment. Councilman Jennings is in support of this initiative, and we are currently collecting community feedback and may hold an informal presentation at the upcoming May Planning Commission meeting based on public input. My hope is that if we have enough public feedback, if enough people reach out to me, I will have a frequently asked questions page that I'll be presenting and answering to. If anyone reaches out to me, I will respond to your questions via email or phone call or however you want me to do it. But also keep in mind, I want to present them, because there is no such thing as a dumb question in my mind. I want to, if you're asking the question, someone is as well, and I want to address those concerns. The next ordinance, we talked about it a lot during the presentation by Cernow, is parking ordinances. Specifically throughout the DDA district, the city is preparing significant updates to the parking ordinance within the Downtown Development Authority district. Businesses and property owners have raised plenty of concerns over the last 4 months specifically regarding the difficulty of meeting current parking requirements. It was mentioned that we are very, very stringent on parking, and it is hurting a lot of our businesses and property owners. So what we're doing, after a review, the city is determined to the city has determined, my apologies, that the ordinance is outdated and restrictive, and that we have found supporting research that presents a need for modernized standards to better accommodate redevelopment and investment within the DDA district. More than likely what's going to happen is you're going to see the solar panel ordinance first in May, and then you'll see the parking ordinance in June, so provided that we have the solar ordinance figured out in May. The next one and final option is the office district zoning amendment. Along 12 Mile, the city is exploring a zoning amendment for the office district to allow additional uses by right. Property owners along 12 Mile have faced challenges in attracting traditional office tenants, while they have also stated that there is a stronger market interest in retail, restaurants, and other commercial uses. The proposed changes aim to make the district more adaptable and economically vibrant. Any further information, draft language, and opportunities for public input will be provided as these proposals move forward. If you go onto the Downtown Development Authority webpage on the Lathrup Village website, you will see in the right sidebar that there is a link to the PDF for the solar panel ordinance. So you can review it if you are interested in it, and you can reach out to me for feedback or for clarifications. Planning Commission members should anticipate reviewing and making recommendations on these items in the future, and I am available for questions at any time. I do want to make this very clear, though. I'm only here 3 or 4 days out of the week, so if you email me and I'm not getting back with you, I promise you it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's probably because I'm not here. So I will get back to you, and I will address all questions and concerns that come my way. So if anyone has any questions on the board, I will gladly answer.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you.
So in your meeting packet, you'll see the updated April 15th site development status. This is also included out in the lobby on our board that we've been putting updates on sites that are currently going through some type of development updates. So our first one will begin with the property that we spoke about tonight, 27300 Southfield Road. I'm sorry, the property to our south, directly to our south, 27300 Southfield Road. The Planning Commission reviewed and issued a zoning interpretation confirming that a laundromat is a permitted use and allowing the project to move forward. Following this decision, the site plan was formally approved on February 20th, 2024. During our February meeting, interior renovations for the white box units, which are part of the laundromat project, are now in their final stages of completion. The approved site plan permits retail and personal care uses in the remaining units. An accounting firm which previously occupied the northern unit is returning to their original location. A nail salon and vape shop are currently waiting for the property owner to complete the interior build-out before they can proceed with occupying their units. 26600 Southfield Road. This was an exciting project that we reviewed during our January meeting and was also one of the projects that Thomas and I got on the parking ordinance about. The property owner has been very vocal with us, as well as other property owners. I've invited him on multiple occasions to attend. His schedule has not permitted it, but I'll see if he can draft a letter that can be shared with the commission during our April meeting. The entrepreneurs putting in the golf simulator at 26600 Southfield Road are still in the process of installing their equipment. I am working with the sign company that they have contracted with to review the proposed sign. The rendering that was provided to me most recently is slightly outside of the size permitted for a wall sign. So they're going back and reviewing the design that they would like to have put onto their business to advertise. The next property, 27700 Southfield Road, is the property that we discussed tonight. It has been approved. We looked back at it back when we looked over different ordinance changes which related to first floor residential, and also the Historic District Commission has spoken about it on 2 occasions, providing feedback which you can see from Surnow Company. They did take into consideration, actually went above and beyond to emphasize the historic portion of the high school so that it's more visible from Southfield Road. And then our final property is for, we went over the golf simulator, all right. So that's all I have tonight for you, Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other items of communication from the commission for the commission? If not, we can take a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved in second. We are adjourned.